Hi, and thanks for checking out this frankarts.com workshop. This one's with Sarah Pike, who is a potter up in Fernie, British Columbia, Canada. In this workshop, we were able to visit her studio. We were able to check out where she makes her work. And over the course of the whole time, she makes 2 mugs. She shows her stamping technique. She talks about how she constructs those mugs, how she puts handles on them. It was a really engaging workshop. If you weren't there the first time, there's a lot of activity in the chat. There's a lot of great communication from people. She and I had an absolute blast putting this together. So I know you're going to enjoy it just for the entertainment value. I know you're going to love it for the techniques that she shows. She's really incredible. I just kind of wanted to throw out there just a little bit about her. She got her undergraduate degree at the Alberta College of Art and Design. She then studied at Colorado University here in the U.S. She then started graduate school at the University of Minnesota in Minneapolis, but didn't complete her degree because she started a family and kind of in the middle of it. But she has her own studio practice in Fernie. The work that she makes is so much informed by place and by, everyday objects, many of them found in the barn she used to work at when she was raising cattle. And then, her work just it's inspiring to me because of a quote from G.K. Chesterton, which says that there's a kind of a profound or a speechless significance to seasons and special places. And I really think that is something that Sarah's putting into these pots that she makes. And I think you'll see some of that in the workshop and the way that she talks about her work. So really glad you could be here. Really glad that you're joining us. And I really hope you enjoy the workshop.
Thanks, Tommy, for such a lovely intro. I'm super excited to be doing this and doing it with Tommy too. So we can have some back and forth, and he's going to be, like you said, he's going to be looking at your questions in the chat and then forwarding them to me unless it's one that's already been asked. I'm just going to get started. I'm going to be making a couple of mugs today, all slabs, because that's all I do is slab building. One of them is going to be just a straight cylinder mug with texture on it, and the other one is going to be one of those ones that's sort of flared out and rounded bottom. So I will work through the whole process. I've got it sort of set up cooking style with all the pieces in various stages of completion to my right here. This is my first Zoom workshop, first online workshop, so please bear with me as we adjust screens and lighting, and I've got my husband here to help with all of that too. Anyways, the first thing I'm going to show you today is how I roll out my slabs. I don't use a slab roller. I roll all my slabs on a table. I have 2 large tables. This is my studio, by the way. This is one sort of clean, tidy end of my studio. I have 2 large surfaces that I work on, and I have one table that's MDO, and that's like a waterproof MDF board, so designed for outside use, so for concrete forming or signs. So it lasts really well with water. It doesn't bloat like MDF does, but it's nice and smooth, and so it's not canvas. It still sort of resists the clay. And MDO, I don't know what it stands for, but if you Google it, I'm sure you'll find it. I think it's also known as Crazon. Anyways, it sticks. It does stick if you have really soggy clay. It will stick, but usually I actually have to wet the table down a little bit to make the clay stick a little bit better, so it doesn't bounce on the table. MDO stands for medium density overlay. There you go.
All right, nice.
My assistant Googled it for me.
We have so much tech support here.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to turn the screen away from my face and down at my table here. So this clay here, if you got the handout, this is Plainsman M390. It's a red mid-range clay body. It's really, really nice and smooth, really plastic. It's great for throwing and hand building. It fires to a beautiful dark red color. I really enjoy working with it. It's also great. I make all of my stamps by hand, and it's really great for that too, because when you're carving, it's not pulling up little pieces of grog and sand. So I'm just going to cut a chunk of clay off here. You know what? I'm going to cut a larger piece because I think I'm going to need more.
And while you're doing that, we had a quick question about what the second surface was. So we had talked about the MDO, and then the second surface was what?
That's a good question.
Oh.
It's a mystery
Oh.
surface.
Okay.
No, it's not. It's the other surface is cement board.
Okay.
So the stuff that I use is hardy backer, wet area cement board. It's designed to go behind tiles in a wet area like a bath, because it doesn't get moldy like drywall would. But I find it really great because it's super absorbent. So when I put my clay on it, like drywall, when I put my clay on it, it will absorb moisture out of the clay. So it just stiffens it up quickly and allows me to work with it more immediately. Okay, I just got some little chunkies on the table there. So like I said before, sometimes I feel like I need to get this table a little bit damp before I use it because I don't want any moisture absorbed out of this clay. But I don't want it shiny. If it's shiny, then it's really gonna stick. I'm just drying that off a little bit. Okay, so the clay out of the bag is quite stiff because clay is thixotropic. So basically just sitting there, it's gonna stiffen up. But if I bang it on the table, it's gonna be a little noisy here. I'm gonna bang it on the table, that's gonna activate the clay. Okay, so now it's softened up. I'm going to squish this clay down and try and maintain a rectangular shape. Now the reason I want to do that, and this is one of the reasons why I don't use a slab roller, is that I want a large rectangular slab. And the reason for that is that most of my mugs are made out of long rectangles of clay. So to get as many rectangles as I can out of the slab, if I use a large oval, like I would tend to get from a slab roller, I'm cutting like a half moon off the top and off the bottom or off the sides that I'm not using. So I want to get as many mugs as I can out of this slab. So once I've got it to about 2 or 3 centimeters thick, maybe an inch thick, I'm going to start slamming it down on the table. And when I slam it down on the table, I'm not slamming it straight down on the table. I'm slamming it down and pulling it towards me at the same time. And every now and then, I just have to kind of remind it of the shape that I want it to be. So maybe pulling out the corners a little bit to get it a bit more rectangular, pushing in a little bit here and there. At the same time, I'm also thinking about the width of the slab that I want. So most of my mugs are made out of slabs that are between 24 and 32 centimeters long. We were talking about this earlier with the inches versus centimeters. I think it's just under a foot to just over a foot. So now these 2 pieces of wood here, they actually are 1/4 inch thick. I don't know what that is in centimeters. So there you go. I'm a bit of both. And anyways,
right.
I've got 2 slats. They're 1/4 inch thick. And this is basically the thickness that I've come to really enjoy. I've got some slats that are slightly thicker and I've got some that are thinner. But I find this thickness, maybe I'll just lift this up for a second while I'm talking to you. This thickness for me is a great thickness to start because it has a nice weight to it in the finished piece, but also the thickness allows me to push texture into it and not get the slab too thin because I'm also going to start stretching the slab as well. So it's a nice thickness to start with for texturing. I find once I start going a bit thicker and I'm pushing the texture into it, I'm losing a little bit of that impression because the thickness of the clay is absorbing it or something. So this thickness for me just works really well, but definitely there's no rule as to what thickness you should use. So I'm going to push this back down. Okay, so I've got this, I don't know what this is, maybe a centimeter thick now from just slamming it down, and now I'm going to roll it. So I'm just going to use, and so the slats are just stopping the clay from getting thinner than that 1/4 inch. And usually I only need to roll it a couple of times and then lift it off the table. It's sort of like when you're rolling out pastry and you have flour underneath the pastry. The flour's there for a couple of reasons. One reason is to stop the pastry from sticking to the table, but 2, it also allows the pastry to stretch across the table. So as soon as this is stuck to the table, it's not stretching out anymore. So I could just keep rolling and nothing's gonna happen. So after I've rolled 2 or 3 times, then I'm gonna peel it off the table. And as it starts to get thinner, the beautiful thing about that is the stretching it and pulling it off the table is actually gonna pull this, it's gonna stretch this slab as much as the rolling. So when I pick it up, I wanna be conscious of where I'm picking it up. So I'm gonna pick it up from the corners because I'm trying to maintain this rectangular shape. Again, I'm trying to maintain that sort of 1 foot, 30 centimeter wide slab the whole distance here. When I'm picking up the slab, I want to be conscious of how I pick it up. So you can kind of see that I'm gently peeling it off there. I don't want to just like really dig my fingers in there and pinch this too hard because then I'm not going to be able to use that part of the slab. Okay. I'm just grabbing my big beefy one now. So now that I got most of the thickness out of that slab, I'm going to use this bigger rolling pin because it spans the whole width. And I want to make sure that my rolling pin's rolling on both slats at the same time. Then I know my slab is consistently a 1/4 inch thick all the way along. So if I can hear that sort of can you guys hear that? There's sort of like a thundering sound. And
Yeah,
I
it's
know
coming
that
through.
It is. There's a
Yeah.
1/4 inch all the way along. The other way I can do it is actually get down here and look between the rolling pin and the slat. And if there's space at any point, often it's usually in the middle of the slab, then it's probably too thick.
Someone's asking where you got your rolling pin from. You just hand hewn that, right? I mean, you guys just made that yourself?
I just like chewed it like a beaver.
Well, it's Canada, right? No, I'm kidding.
It is Canada. No, this actually has a beautiful story to it, this big, beautiful rolling pin. I don't know how long it is, but I was teaching a workshop up in Red Deer, Alberta, and I was talking about rolling pins and how hard it is to find a good rolling pin, a big, solid one like this. And my assistant, who was helping me, she said, "Oh, I'm going to bring one in tomorrow for you to use." And she brought this in, and I used it for the whole workshop. And I was just drooling over it basically the whole time. And at the end of the workshop, she gave it to me.
Oh my gosh.
And she had got it at a garage sale, and there was still a piece of masking tape on it that I think it said $2.50.
Oh my gosh.
So it was one of those rare finds, you know, that has become a cherished item of mine.
That's great.
Okay, so now I've got this slab. Oh, let me about it. I've bought rolling pins online before, and I've bought them at cooking stores. My smaller one I bought at a cooking store. It was made in Denmark. I don't know if there's anybody there from Denmark. You know, Tommy?
I don't. We do have someone from Switzerland, which I realize is not near. Is it near? No, that's not near Denmark.
It's in Europe.
They could be in the same time zone. I have no idea.
And anyways, some of the ones that I bought online, like some of the larger ones, they just haven't stood up to the test of time.
Mm.
They tend to break off. So this one was a big one that I got online, and the mechanism broke, and it's starting to delaminate right here. I still use it, but it's just not ideal. Okay, so now I've rolled out my slab. I'll take a ruler here. We'll talk a little bit more about these slabs. So, like I said, they're 1/4 inch thick. Most of my mugs are made out of long stretches of rectangular slab that are either 7 centimeters tall, 8 centimeters tall. This one I've got 10 and 12. So those are my most common heights for when I start my mugs. And so on here, I've got this in increments, so 7, 14, 21. So I can actually, without having to do any math, just like stick this down here and measure this out on my slab. So I'll show you how I do that. I still need to cut off this uneven part at the bottom here. And then I'm going to take my ruler and just push those slats up to the bottom so it's flush. Can you see that okay? And then I'm going to lay my ruler down at that 7 centimeter increment and just go all the way up. So usually when I roll out these slabs, I can get sort of 10 to 12 mug cylinders from one slab of clay.
And when you're cutting those, is that angle pretty much perpendicular to the tabletop? Like it's not at an angle; it's just 90 degrees to the tabletop, right?
Yes, the cut itself.
Yes, yeah. What you're doing right now, that cut.
Yes, good question. Yeah, it's just I'm just holding the knife straight. So yeah, if I was making a whole bunch of mugs, this is how I would do it. And then I'd make all of the mug cylinder forms, and then once I've done that, then I'd make all the bottoms. I'm just going to finish cutting this to the top here.
A quick question: when you're have you ever had a slab get too thin, like less than a quarter of an inch thick, and do you still try to use it, or does it rarely get that thin because of those strips you're using?
I don't have that happen anymore, but since COVID started, I've been teaching my husband how to roll my slabs for me. And we've had a few times where it does get too thin, and it's just not consistent. When you're looking at the top of the mug, it's just not an consistent thickness. And I feel like you can feel it in the mug, not weighted right. You know, it's not balanced. So I am quite going back to being particular about some things, not all things. I am quite particular about that. Okay, so I'm just going to remove these from this workspace, and then we're going to go to a close-up of stamping.
I know this is kind of stepping backwards really quick, but so we know that those slabs are a quarter inch thick. How tall is the slab, and maybe how wide is this, or how long is the slab you just cut?
Okay, so let me grab one.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. So it's quarter inch thick.
Okay.
And then this one itself is 7 centimeters high. So this width is 7 centimeters, which is, I don't know what that is in inches. It's probably 2.5. And then in length, it should be just over a foot, around 30 centimeters long. But I haven't cut the ends yet. They're still rough. So the only two cuts I have are the top and the bottom. And the top, like one edge is going to be the lip that you would be drinking from, and the other edge is going to be attached to the bottom of the mug. These two ends I still have to cut, but I like to texture. Often I texture first and then cut the ends, because if I'm using a texture roller or some of my stamps are going to stretch that slab out a little bit. So it's better to cut it after. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. So when I'm storing the pieces, usually what I do actually is I just have them sitting on the table, and I will just peel them off on the table just because it's already moist. Remember, I wiped it down before I started. We'll usually hold the moisture. If it's starting to dry out, I'll put a little bit of plastic over top. And then I'll just peel one at a time and move them over to what this piece over here is, the cement board, so that they don't get too dry. If I'm going to roll them out and then not use them for a while, I will put them on like I have a piece of laminate that I just lay them on and put plastic over, so nothing is absorbing moisture out of the clay while it's waiting for me to finish up. Okay, so can you guys see the? Oh, Tommy.
Yeah, that's right. Hi. We're ready for the overhead spotlight then?
You know what? Let's just hold on a sec. I have to do this first part here.
Okay.
I think that will work quite well.
Okay.
And then when I go to actually do the stamping, we'll go over to the overhead. Okay, so I'm just grabbing one of these pieces back that I just rolled out. So I didn't speak about this, but when the slab was still on the table, before I cut it, I used my rib and just smoothed the surface down. So I took any little surface flaws like cracks or little blemishes off with this. It could smooth some fingerprints out. Just compressing the clay too, so making the clay quite a bit stronger. Now I'm going to take that surface, that smooth surface, compressed surface, and I'm going to put that down on the cement board. So this is a small piece of cement board here. It's not very thick. I've got a whole bunch of these that I use in the studio for various things. Like I said before, I do have a table surface covered in this too, but because of the workshop and not wanting to move all around, I'm just going to use a small piece. So I'm taking that smooth compressed surface and I'm going to lay that on the cement board. So that is going to be the inside of my mug. Put that thing, here we go. Okay, so now we're going to take a brayer. This was actually, I think we had this conversation when I was in Kansas City.
Yes, we did.
Some people call these pony rollers, but I really think it's a brayer, and a pony roller is the wet one.
I think you're right.
This is made by Speedball. You can get it at most art supply stores. It has like a squishy silicone material that the roller is made out of, whereas a pony roller would be made out of wood. And you can also get printmaking ones that are more stiff, but I like the squishy ones. I find it just gives a little bit, makes a softer touch on the clay. So printmaking tool, this one is, I think, 6 inches long. And I'm going to use this to soften my rim. So right now I've got this really sharp edge because I just cut straight through. I want to soften that because I'm thinking about how our mouths are going to be touching this surface. That sharp edge is also quite sharp for your lips, but sharp for chipping and stuff too. So let's soften that up. I'm going to roll my brayer just along that edge a little bit, take the sharpness off, and then I'm going to just smooth that taper back into the form, or back into the slab. So it's going to be hard to see, but maybe I can hold it up for you. So this edge is no longer a sharp cut like the bottom. The bottom is still sharp. So the top has a nicer, softer feel to it. And once I've done that, then I'll take my rib and I'll just smooth this side. So this side is now compressed as well.
Earlier, someone had asked if you put water on the slab before you ribbed it. And the answer is no, but you did rub it across that sponge just for a little bit of dampness, right?
That's true. So Thank you. That is one thing that I've really noticed with slab building is that slabs do not like water. Whenever I add water to it, I get cracks. So I'm trying to add water as little as possible. This clay is soft out of the bag, so I don't need to moisten it. It doesn't need to be any softer. but I don't want to add water because for one, it makes it sticky, and two, I tend to get cracks wherever I add water. So I really am not using much water at all, really basically just where I'm joining the clay together. I do find though that just running my rib over a wet sponge just creates maybe like a little lubrication so it doesn't grab as I'm pulling across, but it's not leaving any water on the surface. Okay, we're gonna move to the overhead, Tommy.
The overhead.
I need those stamps there.
Oh, we need a little more. There you go. We got a whole crew here today.
Someone asked me about this rib. It's a Cheryl Tools, those Pike. It's mine. Cheryl Mud Tools. It's, I think, like the medium softness. It's yeah, I like this one. The one I use the most. Okay, so now I'm gonna stamp this up. Can everybody see this overhead screen now? Okay, so here are some of the stamps that I've used on some of the slabs that you'll see today. These are some of my more recent ones. I've been sort of focused on these OGs. So an OG is basically an S curve. So right here, you can see right through here is an S curve. I'm just gonna move this out, put this down here first, so you can see what I'm talking about. So right here is an S curve. This curve in is the same curve as this curve out, so that it fits into itself when I stamp. So I have another one that's quite similar here. And when put together, makes sort of like a gourdish shape, but they do fit together. Their negative spaces fit together. So why do I have it cut in half? So that I can fit it onto the bottom of, say, a mug all the way along, but also so that I can stretch it out. And if some of you follow me on Instagram, you may have seen this. I started making these rectangles to fill this space. So I have all sorts of different carvings that I've done in between. So I can stretch this. Basically just the flat side of the OG, I can stretch it out by putting those rectangles in there and play with the texture. I can mix it up quite a bit. So I'm going to use one of these today, but you'll see on some of the other mugs that I'll be pulling out, I've used these starbursts. Here's another one. Here we go. Those are all starbursts. So when I'm just going to talk a little bit, maybe I'll just take my stamp off. Sorry, clicked my contraption. Yeah, OG, E, E. I know it was new to me this year too. I didn't know what the word was called, but that's this shape right here, this S curve, and it's basically means that it's like this perfect sort of S that fits into itself. You'll often see it in archways. Where was I? So yeah, all of these stamps are made out of the same clay body that I'm making my mugs out of. They were made at, usually sort of shaped at the green stage. And then as they start to stiffen up, I will cut this outside shape out. So the outside shape is something that I'm pretty particular about, because when I push that into the clay, it's going to leave an impression. Just that outside shape will leave an impression. And then this inside stuff that I've carved up, whatever I carve into here becomes raised on the pot. So I'm pretty particular about this whole surface. When I go to touch the clay, the whole surface is touching the clay at once. So they're very flat little slabs. And the lines that I put in there are also carved deep enough so that when I push it in, the clay squeezes up into those little negative spaces and makes a really defined line that the glaze then will break over. So yeah, there's the OGs I showed you. There's these leaf shapes. I have hundreds and hundreds of stamps, but I just thought I'd show you the ones that I used on the mugs that you might see today. Here's a feather that I like to repeat. So a lot of these are all about repeating. And like that large OG, I have a small OG that has a bunch of different stretchers as well.
Wow. Quick question about the thickness of the stamps. Do you cut those from the 1/4-inch slabs, or are they made a different way, or are they a different thickness?
That's a good question. I have done that before in a jiffy when I want to quickly make a stamp. Like some of these ones are quite a bit thinner. The problem with that thickness is that when I squish it into the clay, now I'm trying to pull it out and I'm getting fingerprints into my nice slab that's going to be a mug. So I like making them a bit thicker. So this is probably, I don't know, 1.5 centimeters thick. It just allows me to push in and not get my fingerprints in there. So as far as carving these up, I have a few tools that I like to use. One is just your good old fettling knife. I just can draw it into the clay here, get a nice groove. Then for cleanup, I like these Kemper tools. So this one's got a pointy end, little needle end, and then one of those curved little sharp pointy bits. And I'll take that and I'll just like run it along those lines to pull off any burrs, clean it up, maybe use this end to make it a little bit deeper. There's a few little videos that I've posted on Instagram too that you can watch. I've also started using this diamond core tool. It has a nice narrow end, so I can just pull this through leather hard or slightly harder than leather hard clay to get those deep lines. But there tends to be quite a bit of cleaning up. I do spend a lot of time. I don't know. It's got a blue squishy bit. Someone just asked which one it is.
Right.
I have a bunch of these, but this is the one I want like the thinnest one. I've even kind of squished this together a bit more because I really want that really nice thin line. The thicker the line that I have, the less the glaze breaks over it in a really defined way. Like someone knows, it's P12.
Yeah, P12 is what. Yeah, I don't know if it's written on maybe it's written on the handle. I don't know, but.
Oh, that would be smart. No.
Okay. And I love that people out there, they can look at it and they're like, oh, I know what that is. Definitely. I mean, that's great. I know. They do. It's so cool. Yeah.
Yeah. So there you go.
Well, and there was another question about stamps. Actually, it's funny. Someone chimed in, which was fun. They were like, we need to do a whole workshop on stamps, which would be great.
I could actually do that. I would love to do that because I can get so focused in on these things, but yeah, you'd just be like watching me like for hours. But just even how to make a perfect OG or a perfect fan OG, how to make things repeat even if they're sort of more of an organic shape. And anyways, there are lots of different things that I could spend hours on. So I just wanted to show you some of these stamps that I'll be using today.
Well, I guess just real quick before you're done with the stamps, I guess, that exterior shape, right, where you've outlined it, do you cut that outline shape first and then decorate those lines inside, or do you cut the lines on the inside and then cut the shape out? What's the order of operations? Yeah.
So sometimes it depends. Like usually what I'll do is I'll cut like a rough outline or slightly larger than what I want it to be. And then I have something to work with so I can carve into it. But then when it gets to be that sort of chocolate hard stage where when you're peeling bits off of there, it's not sticking to the clay, it's coming right off. I'll carve in there and really define those lines. And then if I wait to that point, it's not going to start bending these little defined bits. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah,
so
that makes sense.
Too soft. If I cut this, it's just going to distort it. So I don't want to do it when it's bone dry because then it's going to start just okay. Yeah, it'll just start messing it up. If I do it bone dry, it'll start chipping chunks off of there and then I'll lose my stamp.
Makes sense.
Does that cover everything for you guys?
Yeah, there's a quick question about could you use wood as or could you use wood as a stamp?
You totally can, yeah. I've definitely used wood. I'm not as proficient at carving wood as I am with clay. And the nice thing about clay is if I mess up, I can just throw it in my reclaim bucket, right?
That's true.
Okay, I'm going to stamp this guy. I'm going to use this fella. So remember how I was talking about this straight edge? Well, I like that for going along the bottom of the mug. I'm gonna leave like a little space actually at the bottom. So when I'm pushing the texture into the clay, can you guys all see? Is the lighting good?
I feel like it looks really good.
Okay. When I'm pushing into the clay, I'm quite particular about trying to get an even pressure throughout the stamp and also from stamp to stamp so that there's sort of a consistency across the slab.
I want to maybe do a quick shout out here to Sebastian. People are saying that the lighting is totally pro, so way to go, tech team.
Yay, Sebastian. Okay, so there I've got the bottom. I could just leave it like that. Now I'm going to flip it around, and remember how I said that this is going to fit into that space. So now the negative stays. Oh, I need my glasses for this.
Sarah, do you have any idea how deep the lines of the stamp are? Any guesses?
Like how deep they are into here?
Yeah.
Okay, I can measure that out. Can you see that?
Okay, so not deep.
Not deep, but deep enough. You know, like the deeper you go, like there's a certain point where the clay is just not going to squish up any further when you squish it in. You know, like I'm squishing this into the clay, not a ton, just enough to get some raised lines. So if it went any deeper, it's not really going to do anything.
There's kind of that little border edge that you have at the bottom. Is that something you're going to trim off later, or is that going to be on this mug?
Kind of both. I'm going to trim a part of it off, but I leave it there because when I'm squishing in here, I get a bit of an undulation. I don't know if you can see that in there, but I get a bit of an undulation in here. And I do want this edge to be nice and straight when I attach it to the bottom slab. So it gives me a space to cut a little bit off, but also I really like having this just little blank spot at the bottom of the mug.
Mm. It's kind of like a frame.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Frame. Yeah, I'm gonna use this. So now I'm gonna use this rectangle guy. I carved up a really messy bit here, so don't look at that. So sometimes I'll use both sides of these stamps.
The edge that's facing you, is that the top edge of the mug, or is that the bottom edge of the mug?
The part that's facing me, good question, is the bottom.
Okay.
So the lip, I'm going to finish with the lip.
Okay. And there's someone asking about the stamps sticking. It doesn't seem like the clay is sticking too much to the stamps, but I imagine you probably get a saturation level if you're stamping with the same stamp over and over again, right?
Yeah, so that is a good question. So that's one of the reasons why I do love using bisqued clay for my stamps, is that it does resist for a really good long time. I also have not added any water to my slab. That would cause problems. That would cause this to stick in there. But if I am making lots and I want to use the same stamps over and over again, I will maybe alternate. And so while I'm using one, the other one I'll stick on a windowsill in the sun or on a kiln that's firing so that it does dry back out again. But I can usually make a few mugs before it's really starting to stick.
Okay.
It depends on how soft the clay is too.
Right. I'm going to read this question. Do you purposefully make the stamps a particular width or height so that as you move across and up the slab, it doesn't cut off when you get to the end? Or are you not worried about that?
This one, it is going to fit on this 7 centimeter high thing. So I do try. It's tricky though because there's shrinkage and whatnot. And this one, when I was thinking about making it and how it fit together, I made it so that it would fit on here this way. But the length actually got messed up. So it doesn't perfectly fit around my 30 centimeters. So I'm going to end up cutting a little bit of this off, which is going to be at the seam. So usually I like to have that somewhat symmetrical. So I'm cutting the same amount off of each end of OG. So when you do look at the handle, it does sort of match up, but sometimes it doesn't matter. I guess that's kind of an aesthetic choice as well. So, you know, I've looked at printmaking and stuff for ideas and also how to do repetition. And one thing I noticed is that the negative space is so different when you're printmaking, because the negative space can be just the color of the paper, unless you're really embossing, like with letterpress or something. The negative space isn't really doing much. Whereas with clay, the negative space is squishing up between the stamping, and it becomes, if you look between the stamps, there's another little line there. So the negative space actually becomes as much a part of the texture as the stamp itself.
I'm typing up an answer for you right now, but I'll go ahead and ask it also. You don't ever use air dry stamps, right? You want to make sure they're all bisqued, correct?
That is a good question. I will, when I'm making them, I will test them out when they're bone dry, but I find that they just don't last. They'll break down. Like some of these little lines would just pull right off, in fact. So bisquing definitely helps for longevity. Okay, so now I've cut this. I've cut that little edge so that it's nice and clean. And now I'm going to cut it to length. So I've made some marks on here. This is actually 30 centimeters from black line to black line. And I'm just going to line this up on here. And I'm looking at my OG stamp, and I'm sort of saying that looks like I'm going to be cutting off about the same amount on each end. I'm going to use a ruler, and I'm going to hold this on here over my line, and I'm going to cut at a 45 at that end. And I'm going to hold this up so that it's not resting on the slab, because I don't want to mess up my texture. And I'm going to do this one at a 45 as well. Okay, so now we're ready to go back to the other screen. Tommy?
Yep, I'm on it. I'm on it. Someone was asking if you were using a special ruler to trim the edge off, or just a standard one.
I think this is a drafting ruler, isn't it? These triangular ones.
Oh, there you go.
I don't know what it is. But I've come to really like it, although none of the measurements on it make any sense to me.
Okay.
I don't know what they are, but I like it because I can grip onto it.
That makes sense. That does seem nice. Yeah.
I can kind of pull it off. I can hold it at an angle on the clay and not always lose grip on it. Plus, when I cut that bottom bit off of the clay, because it's plastic, it tends to stick to it, so it can pull that off and out of the way.
So here's what's great about this chat feature is we've just had 17 people tell us that it's an architectural scale. So thanks, everybody. That's what that type of ruler is called. Love it. This is great.
I don't know how I have it, but I do. Okay, so now this slab has been sitting on the cement board. This surface, this cement board, has been actively absorbing moisture out of the back of the clay. So the back of this slab is stiffer than the top. And I like that because that creates this, I guess, architecture that's going to hold this slab up when I put it upright, but the clay is still soft enough to maneuver and stretch on the outside. So whatever surface touches the cement board when I'm working will end up on the inside of the pot if I'm stretching the pot out. So I'm going to pick this up from one of the ends. I don't want to pick it up from here because that's my rim. And I've got kind of a nice little undulation there. I don't want to stretch it out weird. And I'm not going to touch it here because I've got a nice straight line there, right? So I'm just picking it up from the end, and I'm not pinching it. I'm just holding it nice and gently. So I'm going to do that here as well. And now I'm going to wrap it around this form. So this is my broken. Is that better?
Looks good, yeah.
This is my broken rolling pin right here.
Oh, right, yeah.
So even though it broke, I still love it
Okay.
because a wooden circular form is great because it's not like plastic that is going to stick to the clay once I start joining these together, and not like cardboard that slowly breaks down over time. I've got this nice big solid thing on here. Okay. So I'm just using it to get that up into a cylindrical shape. Now clay has a memory, so this clay remembers being flat on the table. So I want to give it the opposite memory. So I'm going to use another broken rolling pin. This one's got a narrower diameter to it.
Any idea what? Do you have any idea what those diameters are?
I can measure it.
Whoa.
I'm going to pick it out. 6 centimeters for this
Okay.
little guy.
Okay.
And the big guy is 8.
Okay.
But the diameter of my mug is close to 11.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Okay, so this is a tighter diameter, so I'm going to wrap this around here. Now I'm giving this clay this other memory, this memory of being rolled around. It now remembers being a cylinder, okay, as well as being flat. So what I've discovered is that when I'm working with these slabs, because it remembers being flat, if I just left this like this and let it dry, as it dried, this would open pretty far. It really wants to go back to being flat. So I want to counter that by giving it extra bending memory so that there's less tension pulling on this seam as it dries.
I love that. I remember when you did that here, I was like, that's a game changer. That's awesome.
And I should say that, you know, on the larger the diameter, like when I make my large bowls, it really doesn't matter because it's that distance from flat to that circle is not as crucial as as different, I guess, as this is from flat, right? And so the tighter the diameter, as I start to go in and maybe making a shot glass or something, then I really need to pay attention to the bending.
Interesting. And the underneath your slab right now, on in between the banding wheel and this, what is that?
This is actually MDF. It's just an old little bat that I have. I don't love it. I would like to make some more MDO bats, but it's just a nice little bat to work on. If I did this directly on here, it would stick to it. So, and this enables me to pick it up and move it around without mangling it with my fingers. So I want to touch it kind of as little as possible because every time I touch it, I could be messing up the texture or messing up the shape. So I'm going to use a paintbrush now. I dip it in just water. I don't use slip. And I'm going to paint up those 245s that I cut. Now, the reason I don't use slip, I find that it just doesn't work as well as water. But when I use water, I do paint it a couple of times and it almost turns the water into a really fine slip. Now I'm going to take my serrated tool and I'm just going to try and do this. Usually I do this in front of me, but I'm doing this the opposite so you can see. Let's scratch up those 245. And now I'm going to take them together and just overlap those 245s and gently pinch it together. Okay, now I've pinched it together. I'm going to move this to the edge, put my form back in here. Move this back just a little. Now the reason I put the form back in here is I just want something to counter pressure my brayer. I'm going to roll this up that seam. And if I use my fingers, it would sort of work, but there's, distortions to my fingers, not a straight line. So using this form, it's just a nice straight surface to counter pressure the brayer. And the brayer is just going to smooth and help compress that join just a little bit better. And of course, I'm going to lose a bit of texture in this process. but I'm not too worried about it. For one, it's going to be where the handle is, but you're always going to lose a little texture there. And I find that when you try and there's the seam, you can see how the OG's, this is a full OG stamp, and here it's sort of cut, but it still sort of lines up, right?
Yeah.
I don't restamp it because I find that when I restamp it, it just makes a mess of it. This is already stretched out a little bit because I've now made it circular. That's stretched the stamp longer. So, and it's really hard to do. I feel like it's not needed either. Like, I'm happy with the way that looks. I think maybe we get a little too concerned about that. If you look at fabrics, if I was wearing a plaid shirt, none of the lines would match up. You know what I mean? We're fine with seams and textures or patterns running in different directions. So I embrace it. So once I've got it into a circle, it's joined, I'm just gonna take a flower pot, and I just take, this is I think a 4-inch flower pot, it has a nice taper to it. It's just basically a bisqued cylinder, tapered cylinder of clay. So I can push this into the top, and it's just gonna make my rim circular. Now I'm gonna let this stiffen up and then put the bottom on, but like a cooking show, I already have one ready.
Oh my gosh. And I'm kind of like your timekeeper here. So we are 5 minutes to the hour. We're almost halfway through already.
Okay, amazing. Okay, so here we are. This is one that I made yesterday in preparation. So these are those smaller OGs that I showed earlier. So the flower, now it's stiffer. There's still some flex to it. I can still squish it a little bit, but I wouldn't be able to maybe wedge this up very well. Just for an idea of how stiff it is. So now I use the flower pot to make both the rim and the bottom cylindrical.
Now, someone had asked about warping early on, and I was waiting for a good time to ask you about it. I imagine using that flower pot as a way to help mitigate warping. And is there you don't do anything special in the firing to avoid warping, right? It's all in the making.
True. And yeah, so along the way, I'm making sure that I'm not distorting this rim too much. Like, I'm not squishing it so it's super oval in any direction. I'm not like mangling it. So from the moment I picked it up and put it around there, it went into a cylindrical shape. And then I gently open that cylinder and close that cylinder. As soon as you start putting other memories in there, you're going to start seeing those as it dries or as it fires. The other thing, the flower pot definitely helps with keeping things cylindrical, but you wouldn't want it to dry on here because that
makes sense.
It would shrink and it would crack, right?
Yeah.
But the other thing I've noticed is in the kiln itself, if the shelf, because there's that pyroplasticity. When the clay is getting to temperature, it's starting to soften and move around, right? So if the kiln shelf has got like lots of cruddy kiln wash on it, and the mug is not sitting like nicely on that surface, then it's going to melt into those grooves and stuff, and that's going to distort your pot too. So having a nice, straight, flat kiln wash shelf is ideal.
Quick question about two questions that are the same, and it's just in relationship to what you're holding and then that cylinder. So they're probably the same dryness. Were they both in a damp box together or covered in plastic together?
This one is covered, but it's stiff. I let it stiffen up first. Okay. This one is really soft. It's really gooey. Essentially, like, imagine that I just rolled this out and I just cut it. And before I get any further, I'm just going to lay this on the table here. I'm going to show you. I've got a set of cookie cutters of all sorts of different diameters, and I just love this set. You get these at cooking stores or craft stores, and I, tend to use only 3 or 4 of them, but it allows me to play with dimensions. So when I go to cut my cylinder's bottom, I will pick a cookie cutter that is slightly larger in diameter to my cylinder. Okay. The reason for that is I want to cut off the excess. I find when I cut off the excess, that sort of compresses and helps the joint. So this one was cut with this from a large slab. Okay, I'm gonna put this down a bit so you can see what I'm doing here. Now I'm just gonna give this a slight roll. I cleaned my sprayer and I'm just drying it off now. The roll, I'm not really stretching it out. I'm just making sure that I'm getting good surface contact across the whole bottom of that slab on the cement board. I want it just to set up a little bit. And again, the side that's touching the cement board is going to be on the inside of the pot. So I'm going to leave this to stiffen while I slip and score the bottom of my other mug there. Okay, we're back to this guy. I'm going to flip this. So right now this is the rim. I'm going to flip it to that. This is still pretty close to a 1/4 inch thick right there. Stick that on my flower pot. So when I paint the water on for my joins, I dab the extra water off first because, like I said before, I don't want any water dripping down here. That's going to cause cracking. I only want water when I'm painting it. And then I'm going to score that up. And people sometimes ask me why I put the slip on first and then score it. And that was just what I was taught. I don't know if there's a better way that it works for me. So it was actually a teacher I had in school, Katrina Chater. She's a fabulous Canadian potter. She had us remember it. It's so Canadian. She slips, she scores. So
oh, yeah.
Score it. Okay, so now this is scored. Now I need to score this guy. I'm going to grab one of these little bats. This one's super rough, actually. There we go. And I'm going to flip this over so now the cement board side is facing up.
I just want to kind of toss in here that you're, getting crazy praise in the chat. Someone said that they went to high school with you.
What? Who?
Well, I'm not terribly sure the name, but it's Gail Davis is her name. Remember Gail Davis?
Hi, Gail. Thanks for joining. That wasn't that long ago. Okay, so I'm using the flower pot to pick this up as well, because like I said before, any memory of this being anything other than cylindrical, it's going to want to go back to that. So by keeping it on the flower pot, even when I flip it over, it's going to stop it from distorting. Okay, and I'm holding on to it right up here because this part is thinner, it's stiffer, but it's also the part that's touching the flower pot. This bottom part's not, right? Because of the taper.
And I feel like when working with clay, it's like you develop this understanding of what that pressure should be.
Yes, like how much to hold, and it's like as little as possible, really.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, like holding an egg or a baby bird or anything you don't want to squish.
Yeah, all those baby birds.
Well, yeah, you guys aren't in the habit of running around holding baby birds all the time.
Definitely, we are. Okay, now I'm going to cut off that excess. So I'm going to pull you in closer. So can you see how there's an extra bit at the bottom here?
Mm-hmm.
No?
Oh, no, we can see it, yeah.
Okay. So now I'm going to use my fettling knife. I'm going to put my fettling knife in there and I'm going to cut it kind of straight up and down. I don't want my fettling knife against the texture, right?
Oh, so before you cut it, someone's wondering if you can measure it.
It really doesn't matter. It just
okay.
means like as long as there's enough to cut off some excess.
There you
it
go.
could be out to here. It just means I'm wedging up more clay.
Oh, right.
Just a little bit extra. It's probably like 1/2 centimeter.
Okay.
Okay, can you see if I cut right here?
Yeah, I think we can see that.
Okay. Do you remember when I was in Kansas City teaching and I borrowed your fettling knife, Tommy?
Oh, yes.
Tommy, I don't know what he'd done with it, like run it through some kind of weird auger machine or something. Like it was so it was like, it was like so messy. And when
It
I would
was
go to
bad.
cut, it would just like start doing its own little thing.
Yeah. Well, I have two fettling knives in my studio. One is kind of soft and you can bend it, right? And then the other one is stiff and you can't. And I think I couldn't find the stiff one for you. You were at the mercy of that ridiculous bendy one.
Which you had clearly bent a lot over the years.
Oh my gosh, what? Remember we called it the runaway train. Do you remember that?
Yeah, and then Chandra at break time, all of a sudden I'm talking with people and all of a sudden there's that music playing.
Right.
So I actually often think about that song when I'm cutting around the pot. I'm like,
Oh my gosh, that's great.
okay, now we're down here. So it is. Actually, you know what? I could probably do it up. Okay, so it's stuck on the bottom. It's flush, right? It's circular. Yeah. It's flush. It's stuck. But I really like having a little lip here. So I'm going to roll this. So I'm going to put it down on the flat surface using the flower pot to keep it circular. And I'm going to just gently, with a slight bit of pressure, push down and roll it. Now, this does a couple of things. One is it creates, if you're looking at this from the side, it creates this little undercut here. So there's a bit of a shadow, so it kind of lifts the pot a little bit, but it also creates this little lip at the bottom that's like a lovely spot for the glaze to finish.
Oh, yeah. Now, you're not using runny glazes, but it's just nice to have that as a stopgap, right?
I think it's always nice to have, like, to know where you're glazing to. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
I don't particularly like glazing, so let's make it as easy as possible. So now I know where I'm glazing to. So when I go to wax this bottom, I can just wax it to that edge, you know?
Yeah.
It's nice. If it's sort of a nebulous, like the bottom of a plate or something where there isn't a defined line, it can be, no, I don't think anyone likes glazing.
No, I don't think they do.
Maybe people who, you know, do a lot of decorative stuff, like, I think that would be the way to start enjoying glazing. But anyway, so this needs to set up some more before I put a handle on it. So while this guy's setting up, I'm going to show you how I put a round bottom.
Awesome. And when you're kind of setting up for that, we have two questions. Do you have any idea how much shrinkage occurs after firing your pieces? And then someone else wants to know if you stamp your name on the bottom.
I do. If I remember. I will.
Okay.
So, oh no, this is not, I'm jumping ahead.
What are you doing?
Hold on. I missed a step for y'all. Okay. So we're back to, I'll just leave it there, that's fine. I'm back to a cylinder. I think this is like the one that I just made. It's stiffened up a bit. And now I'm gonna flare. So this is for my round bottom mugs. Sasha, would you mind grabbing one of the round bottom mugs and one cylinder finished so people can understand what I'm talking about? I'm gonna flare this out so that the mug, it has like basically the same diameter at the top as the cylinder mug, but then it's gonna come down like this and then it's gonna have a round bottom. So here is an example of one of those. So it's got the round bottom. It's not straight up and down. It's sort of flared up. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You see that in there?
Well, and while you're holding that up, actually someone had a question about whether or not you flatten the rim or you leave it with some undulation. And we can totally see undulation in that mug.
Yeah, I actually really like that undulation.
Yeah, it's nice.
And you can see this one I haven't sanded it. There's a bit of kiln wash on there. But I'm going to add this to the bottom as well later. So it sits flat on the table. And then here's an example of just a straight cylinder. So like the one that I just made, it's got a flat bottom and then straight cylinder walls and then the handle on the side. Okay, so the first thing I need to do is let it stiffen up enough that when I stick it on here, it's not going to just stretch out on me. But it's one of those hard moisture content things that are sort of a nemesis of the potter. I want it soft enough that I can still stretch it without cracking. So it's somewhere in between there, and it's sort of one of those things that you just learn through experience. So just painted a little bit of water in there to lubricate, like very little. And I'm going to take, this is the other end of my paintbrush. It's sort of a varnished paintbrush. And I'm going to use it a little bit to flare this out as it turns. Being a little careful at the seam so don't tear that seam apart.
And you may have addressed this earlier, but I have a feeling this particular cylinder is a little softer than the flat bottom mug you just put a bottom on?
It is,
okay.
Yeah. So I'm just going, I haven't finished stretching. I just want to show you there how it's flaring out. Basically, I'll use one of these. So this is a larger, this is the one that I used for the bottom of the cylinder mug. This is a larger diameter. And I just kind of use it to, you know, keep stretching it until I get to that diameter.
Well, and you even wrote on that. I just saw that you wrote round bottom on that thing.
I did.
There you
go.
That
was actually for my assistant.
Oh, okay.
I need, you know, 12 round bottom mug bottoms, and then I'll make that for me. So. Okay, I think we're probably there. So once I've got it to that diameter, I'm going to flip it back over and stick it on the banding wheel. Just make sure that this is still cylindrical. And now, right now, I've got sort of this bell bottom shape, right? But I'm going for more of a voluminous out, like belly on this thing. So I'm going to go in there with my potter's thumb, and I'm going to push as I go around. I'm going to push this out until I get the volume I want. There's nothing wrong with leaving it just like that. That would be quite lovely too, but I really do like the volume. Okay.
We're getting inquiries here into how to buy the mug that you're making, and when are you going to have more mugs in your shop, and we want more round bottom mugs. And
you saw I had a couple there. I've been getting some backlash, some lovely backlash from my community saying that they can never buy my mugs anymore. So I'm thinking I'm going to have a little backyard sale here, maybe in the next couple of weeks, for my Fernie folks who have been with me since the beginning. They've been such a supportive community. And then in September, I'll probably have another online sale, another update.
Okay.
I don't know what's going on with the USPS, but I don't know if any of you got a mug out of that last sale, but people are only just starting to get it. And we sent that out, must have been a month ago, right? Yeah, there were some folks that are still getting theirs right now. So I don't know if that's to do with the whole, wasn't there some ballot controversy to do with voting?
Yeah.
Not going there, apparently.
Nah.
Anyways, it's taking a long time. It could just be COVID and everybody ordering things, but
yeah.
I just want you to know that it will get there eventually.
Okay.
It's just taking its time. So I just keep gently working. I'm not stretching in a major way each time. I'm doing a little bit at a time.
Quick comments coming in are saying that your fans in the UK want to see shipping to the UK. And then I love this. Someone's like, where can I buy the potter's thumb?
Oh, no, I only have one. Look at that. See, this one is a potter's thumb. Can you see it? I don't know if you see it. This one doesn't do that, my left one.
You're talking about that hitchhiker's thumb where it really bends back like that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a potter's thumb, isn't it?
I hear it's genetic. I mean, I guess that just means you're destined for this.
Well, I'm just half a potter then.
Oh,
maybe that's why I'm a slab builder and not a...
Yeah, right.
So now I've got it stretched out as far as I want. I'm just going to put it back up this way and make sure that it's still circular here. And again, I need to let this set up a bit before I can put the bottom on, but magically I have one ready.
So quickly here, people are, they're talking about kind of like sales events and stuff like that. Correct me if I'm wrong, Sarah, but if they want to know about when you're doing sales, the best thing they could do is right now go to your website, sign up for your mailing list, right?
I wish, Tommy, that that was the truth.
Okay. Okay.
I keep trying to get on that newsletter thing, but I'm so bad at it. Instagram is really the best way to know. I post updates on there. It will be, once I know the date, it'll be in my profile, and leading up to it, I will post, some pictures of what will be in there. I post a few things on Facebook, but Instagram's my main go-to. I've started trying to figure out the whole newsletter thing, but I just haven't got there yet. I'd like to, because I think it'd be a lovely way for folks to preview.
Oh yeah, that's true.
So right now I load up all the work a couple of days before on the website, just the photos so people can see the work before the sale. So these stamps are these starburst ones. So you can see once it's stretched out, they look quite fun.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so this one is a larger diameter. Like I said, it's already been stretched. I have one cut out. How are we doing on time now?
We're doing great. So we've got about 45 minutes left.
So you can sort of see, I'm doing the same thing over here that I did last time, just giving it a slight roll. So I'm getting good surface contact. Got a little chunky in there. Get that chunky out of there. Good surface contact, and then taking my yellow bit, smoothing that over. Now while that's happening, so I've got this flower pot on the bottom, but it doesn't quite work this way. Like it sort of does, but it doesn't quite work because of just the thickness and the width and the diameter. So I started just using, I have this bowl, it's like a camping bowl. It's just basically a sphere that I push into the bottom here just to make sure I do have it nice and circular before I join it to the bottom.
People are asking if you sure formed the bottom.
Oh, thank you. So I did take some off. So maybe I didn't explain that on the last one. I did. I don't know if I used it on the last one actually. Anyways, sometimes at the join, so this is the join right here, it will kind of just like raise up a little bit, and maybe through just the process of stretching, I'll get like a little bit of a lip because I kind of squeezed it out like this. So I'll take the Sureform and just like, I hardly peeled any off, just a little sliver, a few little slivers just to get, I just want to make sure that when I stick this down on the clay, I have a nice continuous surface touching the bottom of my mug. So just like the cylindrical one, now I'm going to paint this up. Score it up. Now I'm going to form my bottom. So I think we decided this needed to be down low, right? Okay, so this is a bowl that I actually threw on the wheel. It just has a really nice gradual curve to it. The back also has a curve to it, so it could be a slump or a hump mold depending on what I'm working on. The nice thing about it is that because it's curved on the bottom, it almost acts a bit like a banding wheel. I can kind of spin it on the table.
Ooh.
So now I'm going to take the cement board side up and put this inside this very shallow bisque tool. And I'm going to smooth that in there with my rib.
I have this crazy feeling someone's going to ask how you know if that's centered in the middle of the bowl.
It's not, probably, but it's such a gradual curve, it doesn't really matter.
Okay.
This is like one of those rare moments in clay where I'm not super particular. I'm just making sure that this fits in there before go any further. Okay, so again, holding on to this at the rim, I'm gonna flip it over and stick it in. Make sure that it's on the slab all the way around. Now, when I'm sticking things together, if I just squish it down on those two slip and scored surfaces, basically I get kind of like a join like this, I feel. But if I start to wiggle it and really compress it, all of that scored up stuff starts to really work together and you get a better join. So I'm just gonna hold on to this and just give it a little wiggle, just try and really get those scratched up bits fit together. And just like the cylinder, I'm now gonna cut off that excess. Not a ton of excess here. In fact, it's a little overlapped right there, which is not ideal. Hopefully you can see that. So the reason I started doing this, when I rolled the bottom on the cylindrical mug, sometimes when I rolled it, I'd get a belly underneath, like a little bowl underneath the mug, and sometimes I didn't. And it seems to be based on the moisture content of the bottom slab and the amount of pressure and how I put the pressure on there. And I liked it and I wanted to make that more consistent. So I decided to start doing the whole process that I did on the cement board earlier in a bisque bowl. And just having a slight curve to start with, when I go to roll it, the curve actually starts to form even deeper. So instead of a shallow curve, it's just slightly deeper. So right now, if I show this to you, let's make sure it's stuck on there. You can see that there's a slight curve, I hope.
Yeah, that's coming through. Yeah, that looks good.
Okay, so that's not enough for me. I want it to be bigger, but I still want to get that little lip that I was talking about on the cylindrical mug. So I'm going to roll this in here because this is a slump pump mold. It doesn't have a foot that holds it steady. So I'm just putting that cutter there to hold it steady. I know it's like kind of crazy, but.
Someone just said this is magical, and I can't disagree with that.
Oh, yay. So now I'm rolling it in the bowl. And now I'm going to have more of a curve there.
Oh, wow, yeah.
And a lip, too. I hope that you can see the lip. Can you see it?
I think we can. Yeah, there's a little bit of shadow with the lighting. With that pro lighting. Yeah, baby.
Pro lighting slash. So one of the things, I mentioned earlier about that, like one of the things I love about it is it gives me a glazing surface, but it's also this really nice definition of these two parts, right? But again, for a really tight join, I'm taking some of this bottom clay, this bottom slab, and I'm kind of wrapping it up around this slab. So I'm making it even a better join, I believe. All right. Okay, so I really like this curve, but what I found was that whole pyroclasticity thing was coming into effect. And when it was in the kiln, it would just kind of squish down a little bit. So to counter that, I started making it a deeper curve. So this is just like a whole other step in the process, but I made a deeper bowl. So it's got more of a curve inside there. And I'm going to stick this guy in here and stretch that slab into there.
Okay.
I know it seems weird. Like, why wouldn't I just make it in here and roll it in here? It's really hard to get your knife in here and cut that excess off. It's really hard to roll it in a tighter bowl too. It doesn't want to roll. So far, it feels like I have to roll it in the big bowl and then move it in here. But, maybe that will change over time. But right now, this is just like another throne pot, one of the few in my studio, and a deeper curve than the other one.
And with that, it looks like you kind of have those bullseye marks too.
Yeah, so this one, it does matter.
Okay.
That it's in the middle, okay? And it's nice actually for me because I can now rest it in here and I'm not going to lose my curve. So I'm going to lift it back up on here so that you can kind of see the profile again.
Okay.
Okay. because you're not going to be able to see inside what I'm doing, but I'm going to take my, I don't know if you'll be able to because my hand's going to be in there. This is like a small red Cheryl mud tool rib. I just like the softer one for this, plus it's small so I can get my hand in here. And I'm just going to basically rib around and push that clay down into the shape of this bowl.
And are you making an effort to stay away from the rim as much as you can?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm trying to just stick to the bottom there, right?
Okay.
Just the bottom slab. And I got a little overzealous with the scoring, so cleaning that up while I'm in here.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but the little bullseye that you've got, those are probably just drawn lines. They're not carved, right? Because that would leave an impression on your...
True. Just a permanent marker to
Okay.
put on there. So now that it's sitting in here, now you can see that I've got more of the bowl shape.
Oh my gosh, yeah, look at that.
Yeah.
It worked! Who knew it was going to work, ladies and gentlemen? This is astounding.
I will lose a little bit of that in the firing, like I said, but by making it more accentuated than I have, a bit more. Basically, it kind of takes it back to what it would have looked like just in this bowl without the slumping.
Okay.
So yeah, I'm going to do that in a little bit. So while it's in here, though, because it's fully supported, I can kind of look at the outside shape and decide, you know what, maybe I want to just, while I'm here, give it a little bit more volume. So I'm just kind of puffing it out a little bit more.
So while you're doing that, the red rib that you used, again, you probably didn't add any water. That was dry, right?
It was dry, yeah.
Okay, all right.
Okay, so now this needs to set up. Okay, so I'm going to take it off of here because I don't want it to get squished, but I need to let this set up before I can put a handle on here. I'm also going to indent that little, it's like a little belly button in the middle that acts as like a foot for the pot. This is that finished one, so that's
all right.
We'll get it right there.
A quick question, if for both the flat bottom one and the one you're holding right now, it doesn't seem like you did a lot of work on the inside. Let me rephrase, as far as attaching the wall to the floor.
Oh, yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah.
You're right. People often ask if I am adding a coil in there or whatnot. I'm not. I don't find that I need to, partly because that bottom slab is getting curved up into, around the cylinder a little bit. So it's really holding it on there. As long as I clean up all my score marks, it holds together really well, and it looks nice. Just have that sort of sharp edge there. I will sometimes take my paintbrush and clean if there's any little burrs in the bottom, and just kind of maybe just wipe my clean paintbrush through there, and it'll just tidy up any little. Is that what you're asking?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I guess I could show you the inside here, so you can kind of see the inside, and I will just like run my paintbrush through that seam, but the glaze will probably fill most of that.
Okay. And when you say probably, I mean 99 times out of 100, it probably does.
It usually does.
Yeah.
When you're glazing and then you get those little bubbles in the deep spots.
Oh yeah.
I'll just take a little tool and just like pop the bubble and like make sure I push some glaze in there if it looks like it's not going to fill.
I gotcha. Yeah.
Okay,
So
handle time.
Awesome. And just really handles. Well, and there was, do you do that every time you're putting handles on mice? A couple questions here, and I think you addressed this, but just to make sure it's really clear that those rounded bottoms will sometimes flatten slightly in the firing, and that's why you're kind of over exaggerating them, knowing that they're going to flatten just slightly under their own weight, right? In the firing.
Yeah, they do. This clay is a cone 6 clay. It's formulated to be fired cone 6. The Plainsman site's actually quite a lovely site because they'll show you what the clay looks like at different temperatures, and it will tell you the absorbency rate at different temperatures. So you can look at cone 5, it's sort of a dull red, and there's still quite a bit of absorbency at cone 6, less absorbency, darker red at cone 7, very dark red, beautiful color, and very little absorbency. And then as you move towards cone 8, you're getting bloating and stuff. So
Okay.
at cone 7, you're starting to get in the danger zone. So when I fire this clay, I fire it to a hot cone 6, like somewhere between cone 6 and cone 7. And I'm using that work heat. So it's holding at cone 5 essentially. And I'm using visual cones, and it usually holds for an hour and a half until cone 6 is down, cone 7 is just melting. Does that make sense?
It does. Well, yeah.
And I like that because I'm not really over firing the clay. I'm letting it sit at that temperature for a nice soak, so that those satiny glazes are just like really melting and just smoothing over the surface.
Yeah, it's nice.
But because it's hot, it is hotter than the clay is designed to be fired. It is starting to move a little bit in the kiln. So like I said before, a nice smooth kiln shelf is important. Also, where I put the pots in the kiln, I won't ever put the handle close to the elements because I feel like that's going to pull it. So I usually move the handles in. If I put really large handles on these ones, it will start to tilt them over. So like that mug that you were using, the taller Stein, I have to kind of switch that down a little bit. It doesn't have that big belly like these ones because it's got that big full hand handle on it, right? That would pull it off. Does that make sense?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to make the handle here. So it's going to take me a moment to set up. I'll put it on. That's the one I just did, isn't it? The one from yesterday. Let's use that one. Got too many things on the go here.
Got a lot going on. And 30 minutes left, so.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So I'm getting out these slats again. And I'm going to put them on either side of my rolling pin to hold it steady. Okay. And then I'm just going to clean up my rolling pin. There's a little excess dried up clay and chunkies on there. And then I have a cloth here just to make sure that that's not shiny wet. I don't want my clay sticking to it. I have definitely have too many things on the go. I had another mug, but it's missing in action. Okay, so I'm going to stick a handle on here. I'm going to stick it on the seam. I've got some clay wedged up here.
So there was somebody early on, she asked this great question about how you're able to keep track of your tools. And I was like, well, wait, we'll get back to that in a minute. Well, she's like, now's the time. So I think and I think she's right. So do you have a way of kind of managing your tools and keeping them all in one place? Or do you find that you're just hunting for them every time you're making things?
I wish I could say the first, but it's usually the second. I have a toolbox, and I have some little cylindrical containers. Here, let me just put this up for a sec. Like that I'll stick like the most commonly used tools in. I have probably 5 or 6 of these, and I have 4 of these yellow ribs because I just can never find them. And I have lots of serrated ribs because those are the hardest things to find, right? Because they're silver and they get covered in the clay, and then they just look like the clay, and then end up under your banding wheel.
Yeah. That's right.
So I have lots of little containers to put things in that I most commonly use. But then all of my stamps, I just have them. Can you see this table behind me?
Oh yeah, okay. And that's their natural habitat.
Yeah, but look at this plant. It's taking over. There's stamps underneath there.
Gosh. Which came first, the plant or the stamps?
Well, those stamps did. The plant
Okay.
just keeps growing. Like it's kind of amazing how it's taking over. So these stamps clearly are the ones that I don't use as much. The ones under the plant.
They're under the plant. That's right.
As you move this way across the table, those are the most used ones. That's how I organize it.
I was going to say, do you ever like move the plant? You're like, oh, there you are, stamp I loved so long ago. Welcome back.
I do actually, and I even say that today. Exactly. Okay, I'm gonna make a handle now. So I start my handle with ball of clay, and this is always like a bit of a question, like what size ball of clay do you start with? You know, it's sort of trial and error when you're making these handles. You need to play around with thickness and weight, and how many fingers are going to fit into that handle. And I sort of come to this choice, and it's maybe, I don't know. In Canada, we have a $1 coin called a loonie, and it's sort of the diameter of a loonie. I can actually maybe measure it. It's like 3.5 centimeters in diameter. Okay, so I start with a ball like this. I'm gonna put this down. And then I use the rolling pin to turn this into like a dog bone shape. So now I have this shape. This out of the way. And then I'm going to flatten it on the table. And just flatten the two ends because those are the attachment points. Okay, just turn this up here. Grab my water bucket. Okay, hoping that you're noticing all this. Okay, so I want to attach, and I know through experience where I kind of like this handle to start and finish on the pot. So I'm doing it at the seam, and I'm just gonna, actually, you know what, before I do that, I have one more thing to do. So I have just like a piece of wood. It's a nice piece of walnut, so a hardwood. It's just lasted really well. It's got a nice sharp edge on it. Sanded it on a belt sander. It has a bit of a curve to it. I use it for some other things too, on teapots and whatnot. But it's a really nice little edge. It doesn't stick to the clay. But I just want to sort of accentuate that lip there that I created by rolling, by running this tool around there. And this might be a tricky thing to show you. Maybe it'll come around on the side. Can you see that?
Yeah, I think we can.
So that's before and that's after. It's so subtle, but it just kind of cleans it up.
Yeah, I'm looking at the mug that I have here, and I have a really strong feeling you did that with this one because it gets that, little bit of flair, a really nice line at the bottom.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
I probably did. I haven't always done it, but it's something that, I don't know, I feel like as I make more and more, I became more and more efficient with the process, but also less efficient because I keep adding more and more steps.
Yeah, right.
Anyways, I might just puff it up a little bit. I'm just taking that thumb on the inside and just giving it a little bit of volume.
Oh, the potter's thumb, right?
Mm-hmm. My mama gave it to me for a reason.
That's right.
Okay. So I'm going to stick this guy on here.
Okay, so I don't want to add any pressure, but we're getting comments that people are like freaking out that you're going to do this. They are hoping for the most brilliant handle demo they've ever seen in their lives. So,
Okay.
But no pressure, really.
Okay, see you guys, I'm leaving.
Workshop over.
Yeah, I'm going to make a bit more space. Get rid of some of the clutter. How about that?
There you go.
I want you guys all to see what I'm doing here.
Great.
So, okay, again, I'm just going to paint a little bit of water a few times till I get that slip on both ends of the handle. And then I'm gonna do the same on the pot. Take my serrated rib that was right there, amazingly enough. Score that up. Okay, now I'm going to stick this on here.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said before, I'm going to stick it on and kind of squish it around a little bit. That wiggle really helps make it join on there nicely.
And so then you're just giving equal pressure back from the inside of the mug?
I don't think I've touched the, did I touch the inside of the mug?
Well, I don't know.
Yeah, oh yeah, I did. I maybe just supporting it. Actually, this mug is a little on the stiff side, so probably don't need to, but I'm putting a little bit of pressure there. So I've just attached that part right now. Okay, I've not smoothed it on. I like to really see the parts that make a pot, so I like to see that transition from texture to smooth handle as well. Okay, now I'm going to pull it. So I do this just with my thumb and finger. So right now I'm just adding a little bit of water to the whole surface. Maybe we'll just lift this up a bit. And then I can get a little bit more, you see there?
Yeah, that's looking good.
Lighting assistant coming in.
There you go.
So just like working the handle, trying to get any thickness from the top into the handles and working it right up to the wall of the mug.
So you're not using a lot of water, you're not using a lot of pressure, but it looks like you're just kind of taking your time and slowly stretching that clay out.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And I'm working basically from here to here. I'm not coming off the end.
Yeah.
Okay. Now I'm going to attach this bottom bit.
Uh-oh.
Okay, now make sure that it's sort of lined up here. Can you hear me out?
Yeah, we can.
So now I've attached the bottom. I could leave it just like that, but I like the feel of pulling some of that clay up into the handle just like I did on the top. So I'm going to do the same thing and take my thumb and finger, get them wet, put a bit more water on there, and now I'm going to stretch this. So I'm basically I'm doing the same thing, but I'm doing it with a curve.
Yeah. Everybody out there's holding their breath while you do this. Quick question while you're doing it. So the mug is a certain, dryness. The slab was a less dry, when you attached it. Of course, the handle's got to be a little bit wetter, when pulling it.
Yeah.
So everything's a little bit different, but do you then, cover this in plastic overnight or a couple of days, or just leave it out and let the dryness gods take care of it? What do you do?
That's a good question. So you're so right. Right now, this is stiffer. It has been sitting for a while, so the bottom is a similar moisture content to the walls.
Okay.
This is definitely wetter, but you saw that I didn't add a ton of water, but it is still definitely wetter than this. So one thing I do find, especially on the larger mug like yours, Tommy, is that as it's drying, it's shrinking, right?
Yeah.
And it's got to shrink more than this. So sometimes I find that it will pull the rim off.
Yeah.
I don't know if that happens with thrown stuff, but
it can, depending on the thinness of the walls that are thrown. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So sometimes I'll counter that by just pushing this in.
Okay. Okay.
So instead of it being completely circular, I've pushed it slightly oval.
Yeah, I think we can see that. Yeah, we can see that. Yeah.
So now when it dries and wants to pull that out, it can pull it back to circle.
Yeah.
So I'm almost done here. I've got most of the weight pulled out, but it just feels a little droopy to me, so I'm just gonna perk it up a little bit.
Okay.
So I do that by just taking my thumb on the side here. And I guess I should talk about the design of this handle, and I can stretch this out quite a bit too by running my finger in the side there.
Yeah.
Just perking this up a bit. The design here, so I'm thinking about comfort of holding this. So the design, this is a 1 finger or 2 finger handle, depending on how small your hands are. The design is that your forefinger fits under this curve.
Okay.
And then your other finger fits under here. So I want a nice ledge under here that's comfortable to sit on that finger. And I want a nice curve up here for this finger to sit in there, so that my fingers aren't going right against the wall of the mug as well. I also want there to be a little space under here, because if I put this finger under here and I don't have space for that finger under there, then I basically have to lift the mug off the table before I can get my handle, and then I'm splashing my coffee everywhere.
Yeah.
So it's a 1 finger, but really a 2 finger, because it doesn't work without your finger underneath the bottom there. I won't forget the belly button.
I know you won't. It's in high demand. That belly button's in high demand.
And it's so technical, you won't even believe it. Okay, so the last thing I do is just put this back in here.
Oh, yeah.
Make sure that that rim is nice and circular. This one doesn't have a belly button. It's the round bottom one that has the belly button. And then I take that paintbrush and go around the inside, just clean it up a little bit.
There you go, yeah.
And then the very last thing that I do is take that rim and just put it in a little bit, okay?
Okay, that's right. Yeah, make it slightly oval.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it was circle and now it's slightly oval.
Okay.
So that guy is done. Okay. Now belly button.
Belly button.
Belly button. Okay. So this one I think I made yesterday. I'm just going to do a couple things on it before. Sometimes if this bottom gets a little too stiff, the belly button doesn't work. And I might just like take my barely damp sponge, put a little water down there, and take my rib again and just smooth that again. Press that bottom so that when I push this down, it's stretching a bump on the inside. It's not cracking at that point.
Nice. There were a few questions earlier, and I figured that this is a good time to address it. How were you drying that? Was it drying on its rim this whole time?
Oh yeah, it was. And
Okay.
I think that brings up some other questions, like you were asking earlier about how do I dry the pots. Even though I do add that little push in off of circle to allow for the handle to dry, I do cover everything. So I'll make all the mugs, get the handles on them, and cover everything overnight. And then somehow moisture just starts to even out. Don't you find? Over time, if it's covered, it just like moves from the softness of the handle into the pot and just evens throughout, so everything kind of adds the same moisture content. And then I'll take the plastic off the next day and just let it dry.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So you give it a chance to kind of homogenize and then let it go from there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Get to know each other, all the bits. Okay. So I got this on here quite centered. I think the other question was how much does it shrink? I don't know if I covered that. It was.
Yeah, we have had a couple questions about that.
It really depends on how wet the clay was when you started. Like this clay is quite soft when I start, but I'm not adding water to it like you would on a wheel. That would add for more shrinkage, I believe. So it's usually about 10, 12, I'd say 12% shrinkage. Definitely noticeable. I'm just smoothing this over, and by doing this on the wheel where it's relatively centered, it kind of, well, that's a good idea. It kind of gives me an indication as to where the middle is for putting the belly button in. And this is what I was laughing about. It's so technical because it's just the butt end of my fettling knife, and I just push it in there. Just to make sure that it looks somewhat centered.
There it is, people. I hope you didn't blink. Bravo, we're hearing. All right.
But now you can see though, like if this didn't have that belly button, it wouldn't sit. This is not sitting flat because it has some thread on the bottom.
The crowd goes wild. That's right.
It sits flat on there, right?
Yeah.
Because it's not rolling around because it has that. It's like a foot. So. Oh yeah. So you can kind of see that. I think the difference in size. These were.
Oh yeah, there you go. So. That's 12% shrinkage, folks.
It's definitely more noticeable in the larger pots. Like people come in and are like, holy, those pots are huge. And it's like, it's the same as the one you're drinking out of right
now. There's a request to see the, the inside. There you go.
Yeah, trying to get some good lighting in there. It's a bump.
It is a little bump, yeah.
Yeah. It's still easy to clean. I kind of like it because when you're almost done your coffee, there's like this little, this little bump. Okay, where are we at? How are we doing?
We're doing great. So we've got 11 minutes left.
Okay, so I'm going to clean this one up and put a handle on here, and we can, like, if people have more questions.
We do have a couple questions. Someone wants to know, what's the typical volume? What's the amount of ounces or what have you, milliliters that, one of your mugs would hold?
I never remember. This is like a question that you really know the answer to. I think that in ounces that this guy is about 14 ounces.
Okay. That sounds good to me.
And I should know in milliliters what that is. But it's like, somehow there's still things that we refer to in Canada in imperial, and for some reason, a pint is 16 ounces. That's like the only one I really know. Oh, the other one that someone told me was that, I don't know, Starbucks everywhere? Yeah, I think it is.
Oh, it could be.
If you go to Starbucks, the largest size is called a venti, which
right.
It's 20 ounces. It means 20. I think it's Italian for 20.
Mm-hmm,
so for a reference point, 14 ounces compared to a large Starbucks.
There you go. Yeah, mine might be 20 ounces. Oh, I don't know.
Yeah, yours might be, actually.
Yeah, it could be. Yeah. Well over a pint, as it were. A British pint, that is.
Yeah, and then there's that whole thing, like the British versus, I don't know. What is that even?
I don't know.
I had this wonderful, back when I used to do commissions, I had this wonderful commission to make steins for a brewery, a brew pub. And they had this thing where they had investors invest in the startup, and each of the investors were called a baron, and each baron would get a stein that would be sitting on a shelf in the brew pub. So when they came in, they could have their pint in their mug. And
That's right.
Each one was different. And I made, I think there was 20 investors or something. I made 20 of them, and I made them 16 ounces and sent them to him. And he's like, you know what? Our barons need 20 ounces. I think that is a pint somewhere, a different kind of pint. But then I made some 20 ounces too. But I think yours might be 16.
It might be. How about this? If I didn't have 20 chat questions for you, I would go measure the volume. But I'd rather do the chat question. So we're gonna do lightning round. You ready for this?
Yes.
Okay. Can we see the inside of the leather hard one?
No.
Okay.
Not yet though.
Okay.
I'm just gonna clean that edge up first.
And then any ballpark idea how much the mug weighs right now? I feel like we should almost make that like a prize. Like if you can guess how much that mug weighs, but we'll do that. Bean? Yes, that's right. I will ship you a jelly bean internationally if need be. That's right. You will get a jelly belly button bean if you guess the right weight.
Like those jars that you have to guess how many jelly beans are in there?
Exactly.
You know what? I have a little scale. Dib, can you grab that scale? It's in the. We can weigh it.
Cool.
How about that?
Yeah. Now this will be sans handle, so it's skewed
Well, I was
slightly.
gonna put the handle on this one.
Oh yeah, okay.
Right? Don't we want a handle on here?
I've got a feeling people would love to see handle demo number 2, which means we might go over time. So I'm just going to do a little public service announcement that if we go over time and you guys have to leave for another thing, the recording will be available. You'll be able to see what that overtime footage looked like. Overage time, I think, for our football friends out there. And then you'll be able to view it then. So just know that the recording will be coming early next week. So you can check out some of that extra stuff.
Overtime. So the handle the mug without handle, but this will be the handle, so I'll just stick it on there too, is 400 grams.
There you go. Just under a pound. Just under an American pound.
It's 13.8 ounces.
Yep.
Is that right? That makes sense?
Sounds about right.
It holds 400 milliliters.
Oh. I like how you're at this 400 thing. Lots of 400s. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, more lightning round. You ready for more lightning round?
I am.
Okay. Have you ever made a stamp with a design for the belly button?
Oh, that's a good question. I have tried that, but what happens, because I don't have counter pressure underneath, what happens when I push in is I only get the outside circle of that stamp. Like I don't really get a good definition.
There you go.
So far, I have not really. I've just stuck with the settling knife.
We have a request for the signature, whether you literally sign it or you use a stamp. I think mine has a stamp on the bottom.
It does.
Yep.
Yeah. Did I stamp these? Let me see. Yeah. It's backwards. So there it is.
Well, actually, it's straight up for us, but it says Pike. You can see Pike. Yeah.
On my screen, it's reversed.
Right.
For whatever reason. Okay. I'm going to make another handle. You can keep asking me questions, though, if there's more.
Okay, great. Someone wants to see my mug for comparison. We'll do that at the end. When I turn my video back on.
At the top far end, so I can use the plant.
Oh, yeah. Let's do that. Someone asked about smoothing the interior seam of the mug. There you go. That's it.
That's the pint.
So that's the difference in handle. That's probably on my mug, comfortably, that's a 3-handle or a 3-finger mug. Yep. And for you, looks more like 4 maybe. Yep.
But you might have bigger hands than me.
I do. I've got beefy mitts, I guess.
You do?
I guess.
I have pretty big hands for a girl. But I do know that hands come in all shapes and sizes, so I can't say it's a 4-finger one if it doesn't fit everybody's 4 fingers.
Okay, let's see. I'm going. I have 44 messages I want to get through for everybody. This is a good question. No offense to any other questions, but when they dry, is the rim directly on the MDO, or does the rim go on thin foam?
Oh, that's like when it's setting up.
Or maybe any different part of the process. Do you?
So when the clay is still quite soft, I don't flip it over because yes, I want to keep that undulation. I don't want to lose it. I don't want to flatten it out. So I won't flip it over until it's stiffened up a bit. Once it's stiffened up a bit, if I'm gentle when I flip it over, I don't lose the undulation. It doesn't actually matter. Whatever I put it on is fine.
Okay.
But when I'm drying my pots completely, it's funny because I think when I used to throw, this was commonly what you do is you put your handles on, then you dry everything upside down. Is that what people do?
I've done that a lot, yeah.
I wasn't doing that with these.
Okay.
And then I started doing that recently. And I don't know why. I felt like, because it takes longer for the bottom to dry than the rim, right? Like this dries so quickly, there's so much air getting to it. So I thought maybe if I flipped it, then it would just dry more evenly. But to be honest, I haven't really noticed that much difference.
Okay.
So now I'm doing that little wiggle, stick this on here.
So this, there's a question here that I know that you've talked about, but we'll just address it one more time because I think it's important. It says, do you have handle trouble when the handle side, with the handle side weighing down the side of the mug, and does it kind of droop to that side, you know? And this is where you had talked about slightly ovaling it so that when that handle does pull your mug, it kind of pulls it back into round.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, if I look at these ones that are fired here, and I look at the shape, like they're staying pretty cylindrical.
Yeah.
You know, every now and then I get one, and I think it might be like where it was in the kiln. Like this one's slightly off circle.
Oh,
but
yeah, yeah.
they're really staying quite cylindrical. Like, I started really looking at prone pots too, and realizing that all pots in the kiln just, I think they just move a little bit. They're staying pretty cylindrical. If I didn't, like I said before, if I didn't kind of flatten this out a little bit before firing it, I do think that it would move over. But I flattened this one a bit more. It doesn't have the same belly that this one is.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, I can see that.
And it's a little higher.
Yeah.
So I definitely flattened that down a little. And also on these ones, I might even, if it's stiff enough, I might, when I sit it upright, I usually have to kind of level things up a bit. When I stick that fettling knife in, it's maybe not even, or it's not perfectly circular. So when I put it upright, it might not be level. So I will put it on here and level it if I can, and maybe just lean it away from the handle of it. So when it does melt in the kiln, it's, you know,
kind of comes back to level.
Yeah.
You know, with that large, and I know that you're making a handle right now, but with a larger handle, do you kind of approach it the same way as far as rolling it on the rolling pin and things like that?
I do, of course, more clay.
Yeah.
And it just takes a little bit longer to stretch it out. And I actually find them more difficult, the bigger ones.
Mm-hmm.
So it just takes a little bit more practice to get the longer ones done. I'm not even in the screen. Tommy.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm busy. I'm going through chat questions. Oh, man. Here's a question. When you're making a batch of mugs, do you do each step kind of all at once, or do you completely make a mug all the way through before starting the next mug?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And I guess because I've done this sort of cooking show style, you've seen me make it and then put it to the side, and then it's magically stiffened, and I've done the next step. When I have, say, 12 to 16 of these going at the same time, I can often get to, finish that one step on that 16th one, and then go back to the first one, and it's ready for the next step.
Mm-hmm.
So I do like to have a lot going on at the same time. Otherwise, there's a lot of time where I'm idle, right? So having more on the go, there's sort of like a magic number for whichever form I'm making, or I just sort of get overwhelmed and have to cover things and can't keep up with it. But that sort of 12 to 16 seems to work well. Might have to cover something for a little bit, but I do like, so it depends on the form. Like if I'm making teapots, it maybe be 3 or 4 mugs like these ones, more like 10 to 12 because there's more steps. The cylindrical ones maybe 12 to 16.
Okay. Quick. This should be a quick question. What kind of kiln? What brand of kiln do you use? What do you have at home?
I have 2 Scuts.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And they're those programmable ones. And they're both about 15 years old.
Oh, okay.
I actually, like when we moved here, I bought my first kiln when I was 13. I lived on the west coast of British Columbia on an island called Salt Spring. And it's a very artsy community, and my parents had a small gallery there, and so we had a lot of friends who were artists on the island, and I had always loved clay, and so one of the potters whose work was in the gallery knew that I was super interested in it, and when he saw that there was a used kiln for sale, he let me know. And I was working at a restaurant as a bus girl at the time. So I'd saved up some money. I think it was $150 for that used kiln back then. My dad probably spent more than that wiring it for me.
Yeah, right.
But I only just got rid of it not too long ago,
Oh,
maybe
wow.
5 years ago. Yeah, it lasted a really long time. And when I bought it, it was used. And that was a long time ago. So I sort of stuck with this gut because of that.
Nice.
Although I hear the new ones you can program with your smartphone. Right?
Yeah. You can't, my understanding is you cannot start them with a smartphone. You
Oh,
have to
really?
be there to make sure the lid is closed and there's nothing flammable next to it. And so you have to be next to the kiln to hit start, but you can monitor it from a distance.
Which I love.
Yeah,
Because, if I'm, say, out for dinner or in bed and I just want to make sure the kiln's still going, and not
that's
in
right. It's not going to overfire. It's not going to underfire. Yeah, it's nice to be able to monitor it from a
I think
distance.
I might need to invest in that next time, but because the kilns I have will never break down. Okay, so there's another handle. So the 2 mugs are now complete.
All right. And I know we're into overtime here, but I think people they're gonna mutiny if I don't ask you briefly about your glazing process.
Okay, I was gonna make sure that this is fairly level.
Okay.
It's pretty soft there, but there you go. So there's the round bottom of me. Okay, my glazing process. My glazes are, I just dunk the pots basically. But what I do because I don't want a bunch of drips and stuff distracting from the texture that I have on these pots. And with a dark clay body and a lighter glaze, all those drips, I feel like they would start to really take away from the texture. So I will line the pots on day 1, so fill them all with glaze, and then on day 2, with my hand inside the mug, dunk the mug in the glaze up to the rim on day 2, and wax before that.
Okay.
Yeah,
and you're probably always using the same glaze inside and outside, right? You're not trying to do a 2-tone match or anything like that.
I do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, did I interrupt you when you were going to show us your amazing technique for grabbing the inside to dunk it?
Oh, I just put my hand in. It's not
okay.
I just put my hand in there, dunk it, and put it on the table. But I am, this is, we were talking earlier, maybe before the official workshop started, about where I am very particular and where I'm not. Like, the rest of my life, I'm not very particular, but clay I am. And I always make sure my glazes are the same. What is it called? The specific
gravity. Yeah.
Yeah, I always make sure that they're the same. I re-sieve my glazes periodically, because you get little bisque bits and sponge bits in there, and that just makes it, that ruins all this work. So
yeah.
I re-sieve it, get all those chunkies out. I'm pretty particular. I don't let anyone else glaze my pots.
Oh, okay.
No. The only thing I let people do in here, or I pay people to do, or teach you, is roll out the slabs for me. And
okay.
cut them.
All right.
Cut them to the right size, because I'm so particular.
Sure. So there's a little question about like the rim, as far as the rim being taken care of when you're doing this, first day liner, second day exterior.
And yeah. So when I pour the glaze in on day 1, when I swish it out, I kind of swish it so it coats the rim.
Okay.
It covers the rim, and then the next day when I dunk it up to that line.
Yeah, got it. And then there's a question of why calcium-based glazes. Now, I think I have an answer to this question, but I really want to hear your answer to the question.
I want to hear
your. You go first.
Okay. So I came from working in an art center, actually, and the art center had all these beautiful kilns with kiln salt, soda kilns. And in school, I did mostly atmospheric firing as well. And I really loved the soda, that softness that you got from the soda hitting the glaze. And I felt when I had kids and we moved, and building a kiln just felt like overwhelming. And because we were moving and stuff, I wasn't sure if I could build it and then move it. I tried to replicate those surfaces in an electric kiln. And to me, the closest thing was these calcium-based sort of satiny glazes.
Yeah.
And then using the red clay, I love how the red clay breaks through that satiny surface, and all that texture becomes like almost like a line drawing on the surface, right? So especially the more defined lines. So
Yeah.
breaks through. And I also find like there's a bit of sheen to that. You can see when I hold it at a certain angle. So there's a bit of sheen, like it's very soft though, it's not shiny. But the shinier it is, I feel like because you get that glare off the surface, you don't see the texture. You can actually end up losing the texture a little bit. So I really love the softness of a satiny calcium glaze, and the lack of sheen. So that's just bringing over some others where you can see that the glaze is breaking through.
Oh yeah, I mean it's just great.
And so this is another carved area right here, but because it's not a really defined line like the tree, it's not coming through as strongly, right? Like the trees are super dark.
Right.
And then this one, you know, with all the different lines breaking through. If it was super shiny, like when I hold it right to the light, you can end up losing. Now the trees, I haven't actually covered that. Hold on just a sec. So lately I've mostly been texturing with repeated stamps, but I used to mostly use texture rollers. So this is a slab of clay that I turned into a cylinder, and then at the leather hard, same as making the stamps, I carved out these trees, and then when I roll this into the clay around the surface, whatever I've carved out sticks up on the surface and becomes the texture.
I have a feeling we might have to do a stamp workshop if you're interested. I think they are.
Okay, I would like to do that.
Yes, please. The immediate response. Yes, we're getting loaded with yeses. Yes. Anyway, my silly 2 cents about your calcium glazes. Just like your bones, calcium is really nice and hard, and it makes for a really nice, solid glaze.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, I mean, it is. It's a very good utilitarian glaze. So if you can have lots of other glazes that look shiny, and we think shiny equals food safe, and that's not necessarily true. But usually with calcium glazes, they can be really hard surfaces, and they can more likely be food safe, especially with knives and forks and things like that on plates. So, with our powers combined, man, you've got these really great utilitarian surfaces. So
that's awesome. I like that. Yeah. Calcium. And calcium, like when you say something has, I'm trying to think, like soda in it, like it's less something that we can relate to. But yeah, when you say calcium, you do think of bones and strong bones. So I like that.
All right. Well, I think our overage time is over.
Our overage time is over. Well, I do want to say a huge thank you to you, Tommy, for hosting this. It was really great to do it with you.
Yeah.
And thank you all of you, for joining us today from all over the place. It's been super fun.
It's really been great. And I'm going to hop in here and say how much, again, Sarah, I appreciate you being here. This was awesome. I mean, it was absolutely fantastic. I mean, the chat right now is just exploding with thank yous. It was amazing, right? I mean, just really great. Probably exceeded my expectations. And I've already seen this once, so it was even better. It was awesome. So it's really fantastic. If you don't follow Sarah on Instagram, I don't know why. You should start following her now. It's the only way you're going to find out how to get your hands on one of those pots. So do that. And if not, then please make sure you're signed up for the Frank Arts mailing list, because there could be another stamp workshop in the future. There could be some other things that we can let you guys know about too. We've got a few other workshops that are going on this fall. Stephen Hill's going to be one of those people. Meredith Host is going to be one of those people. We're really looking forward to that, and just keep on expanding, this workshop format. It's so wonderful to be able to reach so many of you guys through this format, and I know that Sarah, we were talking about this earlier, how great it is to have so many of you from literally around the world who are able to do this. Thanks again. Thanks so much, everybody, for being with us.
Thank you, guys. We'll talk to you later. Bye. I'm leaving.
Okay.